From Hollywood, it's Paranormal Tonight. I'm Mark Summers, and now, here's your host, Dan Harary.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to From Hollywood, it's Paranormal Tonight. I'm Dan Harary, broadcasting from beautiful downtown Beverly Hills, California. Not quite Hollywood, but close enough. This is my office, and today I have a very special guest. It's a woman that I've been emailing with for more than a year, but I have not yet met in person, and we're going to meet soon right here on this show. So let's go here. Here we go. Mindy Tautfest is a published author, speaker, and television personality, renowned for her pioneering work in UFO investigations. As the owner and CEO of the Hayden, Hughes International UFO Bureau, she leads efforts to transform our understanding of UFOs and UAPs. Integrating decades of documented research with cutting-edge technological innovation, her group is dedicated to exploring the nature, origins, and capabilities of these phenomena. Under her leadership, the organization provides a data-driven approach to enhance scientific understanding, inform global policies, and prepare humanity for potential contact events with these phenomena. In 2023, Mindy oversaw the recovery and digitization of the International UFO Bureau's historic files, preserving decades of pivotal UFO research. And of course, we'll be talking about that in a minute. As the former dean of MUFON University, Mindy developed a comprehensive training curriculum for field investigators that is used globally. Her meticulous research has been featured on the TV shows Ancient Aliens and The Proof is Out There. A personal near-death experience in 2016 inspired Mindy's exploration of connections between NDEs and UFO encounters, which I find absolutely fascinating. Today we'll be talking about Mindy's book, which is called Dying to Meet Them, One Woman's Incredible Journey from NDE to UAP. Mindy resides in Oklahoma City, and when you meet her, you'll hear her accent. There, she's dedicated to assisting experiencers in processing their encounters. She also continues to spearhead the International UFO Bureau in its mission to illuminate the past, understand the present, and guide the future. And if I don't screw this up horribly, here comes Mindy Tautfest.
Hey, Dan.
I did
Hey,
it.
you did pretty good.
Not too bad. Not too bad.
That was a mouthful. I'm surprised you read that entire bureau or the whole bio.
I cut it down here a little bit here and there. Plus, I'm a fast reader. How are you? Very nice to meet you finally.
Yeah, it's good to meet you too. And thank you so much for having me on here.
Oh, sure. My pleasure. I really do appreciate it. So my first question, I always like to ask my guests this question just to set the stage, where are you from originally? What did you do as a child, or what were your interests as a child, and what did your parents do?
All right. Well, I'm from Oklahoma City and I've lived all over the state. My husband, when we first got married, he was a Southern Baptist minister. And so we traveled all over Oklahoma and preached the gospel, which leads into my near-death experience and everything that we'll get into.
Okay.
But back here in Oklahoma City now, and as a child, my interests were always UFOs.
Wow, really? Is that right?
Yes, I talk about me and my sister, we would ride our bikes from my grandma's house over to the bookmobile that was there in the little community. And my sister was 4 years older and she'd check out books on cats. And I would get every book I could on UFOs, even if I couldn't read them. I just wanted to look at the pictures.
Wow.
it's always been something that's very ingrained in me. So as a child, I watched Sightings and Unsolved
I
Mysteries, and
remember Sightings. Yeah, that was a good show. Yeah.
yes, so that was my interest. Unsolved Mysteries, it would come up with unexplained, and I'm like, we couldn't pause the TV then.
Right, that's right. In the
Just
Stone
be
Age.
quiet. They're
In the
talking about
sto-
UFOs. So, and then you asked about my parents. I was raised by my mother, and she was an operator at Southwestern Bell, and she was actually involved in the Oklahoma City bombing. The
Wow.
Southwestern Bell building was right across from the Murrah building. And so that day was horrendous. I was in 10th grade when it happened, and we were about 15, 20 miles from downtown whenever the explosion went off. And we heard it there in class, and
Wow.
it sounded like metallic. I thought maybe like one of those big trays that had, um, you know, cafeteria trays on
Right.
it, one of
Right.
the big things that carries all of them had fallen over or something. It sounded like that. And pretty soon they came on the loudspeaker and said, anybody that has parents that work downtown, please come to the office. So, and I know we're going to get into UFOs, but this was really a pivotal thing in my childhood. I was about 15 when it happened, and uh, so we all went to the office, and one by one, everyone left, and I was like one of the last ones in there. Never got a phone call. Of course, all the phone lines were tied up; no one could get through. And I ended up going home and sitting there with my couple of aunts and my sister, and we just waited. And it was late evening before we heard anything from my mom. I guess our car had gotten damaged badly there in the Journal
Parking lot?
Record building,
Okay.
the parking garage that was right next door to it.
Wow.
And so she ended up staying there and setting up communications through Southwestern Bell for all the first responders, and had called in to get golf carts and all kinds of stuff. So she was kind of organizing the response and trying to get everybody together to be able to communicate for the rescue mission. And so that day was wild, but it was very pivotal. But mom was never into like UFOs or anything. She actually had a UFO sighting during the 1965 flap that
Wow.
was investigated by Hayden back in the day when the Bureau was up and running under his direction. And I mom had told me she had seen one in the summer of 65, and it was close up. I mean, within a couple of 100 feet of her and my aunt. But I never put it together until I read about the 1965 flap, and I said, "My goodness, mom, you actually saw one of these saucers from this huge flap that happened here across Oklahoma and some of the central US." So that's kind of it in a
Yeah, well,
nutshell.
that's a hell of a story about your mom. Yeah, she wasn't injured, obviously, thank God.
No, thank God. We
Yeah.
we didn't know. She was interviewed twice by the FBI because she had walked right in front of the Ryder truck as it was parked there, like in a back alley behind Southwestern Bell. And she had seen John Doe number one and number two.
Wow.
And so they came in and spoke to her a couple of times about it, and it greatly affected her, everything she saw there. And I'm sure still carries some trauma from it.
Oh, yeah. Wow. I don't know how you ever got over that. That's it. That's quite a story. Okay, let's
Yeah.
jump forward here. So, do you personally have any UFO or ET experiences as a child or as a young person?
I get asked this a lot, and I don't. I have memories of flying out the window and
Wow.
flying over my house and up across the street and seeing everything kind of disappear beneath me. I don't have any concrete memories of any abductions, or, I mean, I've seen lights in the sky, nothing close up. So I don't count myself as a UFO experiencer, but I have things that are questionable, that would point to maybe. I had more as a child, starting at the age of 8 when we moved to a new home, started having occurrences with Hat Man, which is a shadow being. And this followed me all the way up through my mid 20s. Even when I was working as an ICU nurse, I would lay there paralyzed, terrified with
Wow.
this hat man standing in the corner or walking down the hall or whatever. So I don't know. I know that there's some talk and discussion that there could be some correlation between some of these shadow beings and ET entities, but I mean, it's another thing that's kind of in my past that could point to it. But again, I don't count myself as a UFO experiencer per se.
Well, it sounds like if you were buying UFO books at 4 or 5, 6, there was some like thing in your like Mindy, read about it, like you had a calling. It sounds like you had a calling as a child. And then when you're floating through the air, do you think those were dreams or were those real memories?
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
There's such a fine line, and I'm sure after speaking with experiencers, you hear it was dreamlike, or but there's no hard evidence, so I don't have anything to back up if
Right.
anything really did happen. Um, so again, I wouldn't count myself an experiencer, but are they strange experiences in my past?
That's
Absolutely.
a that's a good answer, actually. Did you ever have any like weird scars or marks on your body?
No, I
Okay.
didn't.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So I don't know this story. So in 2016, you had a near-death experience. So tell us all that you want to reveal, and I'm going to sit here
Yeah.
just in awe because I just don't know the details. So do you hear that noise?
No.
Do you hear it now?
No.
Okay. All right. There's workmen working in my building downstairs. So anyway.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Yeah,
All
I'm
right.
not
I'm
hearing
sorry. I'm
anything.
sorry. Kurt, cut that out, please. My editor, he'll cut that out. Okay. Please tell us about your near-death experience.
So in 2016, I was living out on a 300-acre wheat farm with my husband. We had moved back out there. My father-in-law was having some health issues and needed help out there. So we moved back out to his childhood home. And we were actually in a beat up old trailer house across the street with our two kids, JJ and Aneshka. And they were elementary age at the time. And my husband was working, as I said earlier, he was a Southern Baptist minister, but he was also a teacher. And he had actually gone back to work at the school he attended as a child. He graduated with like 17 kids. That was his entire graduation
Wow.
class.
Wow. That's
So
interesting.
if that tells you how remote we were. But my kids were attending school there, and John, my husband, was driving the school bus. And the kids, of course, would jump on with him in the morning. They'd run their route and go on to school. And then after school, he would drive the bus route and then bring the kids, our kids back home.
Okay.
And so that morning I had gotten up. It was actually November 8th, which was the day of the election, which between Hillary and Trump. And so we had gotten up and we were planning on taking the kids with us to go vote. And I'm not spilling who I was going to vote for at the time because that's neither here nor
Yeah, I
there.
think
But
it's irrelevant at this point. Yeah.
well, I am very apolitical at this point. I can't stand politics, but that was that day. And so I woke up, saw John and the kids off to school, gave them hugs and kisses, and went in to go about my day. Brush my teeth and everything, start getting ready. And when I did, I saw that my face was a little bit swollen on the right side. And so I took a picture and sent it to John. And I said, "Hey, my face is a little swollen. I don't know what's going on, but no pain or anything." And he said, "Well, why don't you try taking a Benadryl and go jump in the shower and just give it some time to work and see if maybe it's an allergic reaction."
Right.
Um, I have a genetic condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and it causes like extreme flexibility and everything. So most of us were
I'm surprised. I'm
dancers or
surprised you weren't.
gymnasts.
Yeah, I was going to say. I'm surprised you're not in Cirque du Soleil or something.
Yeah, well, that's it. Back in the day, those were the circus acrobats. Most of them had this condition.
Wow,
Interesting enough,
that's great.
but it causes all kinds of stuff like joint dislocation. So you see the people doing contortion. My daughter does contortion, and it's just natural for us. But we have to be careful because it causes a lot of pain when we get older, unfortunately. But anyway, so I have this condition, and it also causes. It has other things that go in conjunction with it. So it causes problems with our heart and allergic reactions. So that's why we had jumped to that,
Okay.
thinking this is an allergic reaction. So I did what he said and Got out of the shower. By this time, it's early afternoon, and I go sit on the couch after getting ready. I'm waiting for John and the kids to get home. It's probably about 4 o'clock, 4:30, and I open up the front door, and the kids would always come run in and "Mama, Mama," and tell me about their day and give me hugs and kisses. And so I was waiting for them to come in any minute. And I sat down on the couch and opened up my phone to see if there were any early exit polls coming out
Right.
and see kind of what was going on with that. Well, as I was sitting there, I heard this loud explosion go off in my head, and it radiated from like the base of my skull and just pow. And at that moment, I thought maybe I had been shot because there had been coyote hunters out around the area.
Okay.
And I thought they have shot through this flimsy freaking trailer house
Wow.
and shot me in the head. And so, being an ICU nurse before, I'm trying to assess airway, breathing, circulation, and I'm trying to focus my attention to the back of my head to see if I can feel blood running down and just how bad this is.
Right.
And as I'm doing that, I start to feel what I call an electrical avalanche. And it went from the top of my head and it rolled down my body, down to my toes. And it was excruciating. And at that, I realized like, this is it. I'm not going to be able to survive this. This is whatever this is awful. And I had started kind of realizing this is probably an aneurysm, which again is tied to my genetic condition. And
Okay.
at the time, they had told me that I wasn't at risk for them, but obviously I was. So as I'm sitting there, I look up at the door and my heart just broke into 1,000 pieces because I'm thinking, oh my God, my kids are going to come in through this door and they're going to find my dead body. And I lost it, Dan. My head, I was so distraught in that moment. And I started praying, God, in my last thoughts on this earth, in my body, I was praying, God, please don't let my kids find my body.
Okay.
Uh, let it be John, but John's not going to do good either. So I I went into a deep, deep prayer. And as I was praying, I stopped suddenly. And that's whenever I started to look around and I realized I'm in darkness and I'm not in any pain and I'm more just curious. I'm looking around and I'm trying to figure out where am I?
Okay.
And my first instinct was to put my hand in front of my face, which that's what's on the cover of the book is my hand out in the darkness. And I couldn't see it. So I was trying to figure out, is it dark here or is there nothing here to see? What's going on with this place? I was curious. And so I couldn't see my hand. So my next instinct was to clap. Like, well, do I have hands? So I started trying to clap. And that's when I realized that I was just consciousness floating out in this darkness.
So were
I
you
had
able
no,
were you able to clap your hands together?
I was not.
Okay.
And so I realized I had no form. That's the moment that I truly understand, my God, I've crossed over. I've completely crossed over. I did not have what some people talk about leaving their body and seeing the earth below them and seeing their body. I didn't see any of that. I think I was in such a distraught state I didn't even know. And I didn't know until I was there, and that's why I was kinda like, "What's going on?" I'm looking around trying to figure out what this is, and so as time is passing, I'm thinking about my kids, I maintained my full identity and all my memories, uh, I was thinking about John and the kids, and I started praying again, saying, "Please be their peace." I don't know if they found my body yet. Yeah, I was very concerned about it because my kids were young and I didn't want that to be the worst thing that ever happened to them is
Yeah.
coming in and finding their mother.
And this is all in total darkness still.
This is all in total darkness. But while I was there, eh, the best I can describe my form, I don't think I look like this, but I felt like a dandelion puff that is kind of wispy, but there and expanded. Everything I felt and thought was everything that I was. And so my emotions and my thoughts weren't contained within a physical form anymore. So they were expanded and almost connected with this consciousness, like a universal consciousness. I felt connected, but there was no end to what I felt. It was so much more magnitude than what I've felt on this earth. Uh, and so everything that I felt was overwhelming in a way that I can't even put into words. Excuse me. But I sat there in prayer, and as time continued to pass on, I became very concerned because I'm looking around, I'm waiting for the tunnel of light, I'm waiting for my grandparents to show up, I'm waiting for Jesus to show up, I'm waiting for what we all expect in the hereafter. And especially being a Christian, I was always taught to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And so I thought immediately I should be in heaven. And I wasn't. And I sat there and it seemed like eternity. And I started going, oh no, what's wrong here? What's going on? And I was like, okay, I'm trying to think what comes next. I'm getting ready for judgment. Maybe I'm going in front of judgment, and this is kind of a waiting or holding or something. I'm trying to figure out what the hell's happening,
Yeah.
and because it was completely outside of the realm of what I expected in the afterlife. And as I waited, I became very distraught because time passed more and more, and I'm praying, God, Jesus, be my righteousness. I've obviously done something. Why am I forsaken? I don't understand why I'm out here by myself. Can you imagine the thought of being alone forever with
And,
just your thoughts?
and being aware, being aware of your situation. Yeah.
That is what I felt for what seemed like an eternity, being there by myself. And so just not understanding, no answers. Why? Why am I here by myself? I annoy myself sometimes just when I'm sitting home, but I can flip on a TV or I can do something. There was nothing to take away from that pain I felt. I couldn't twiddle my thumbs. I couldn't look at something. I was only my thoughts.
Okay.
That's what was so horrible. And so I started, some people have a life review. I didn't have that. I had more of a self-reflection where I started looking back at my life and my actions and how I had affected other people. And when I did, found I found actually a new love for myself because I thought, okay, I've actually been a pretty good person. I've actually loved or love other people, and always acted in the best interest of others that to my best ability. But I was lacking in loving myself. And as soon as I realized that, that's when an entity showed up over my left shoulder. And I could kind of feel him there watching me. Um, and let me try to explain the situation. As I was sitting there, I could feel God all around me. And what I explain as God is not a man in the sky. It was uh, a force, just a permeating force from all time, beginning to the end. Everything that ever was, ever will be, it was pregnant with that moment before coming into being. Um, it contained everything. Uh, so I had a whole new appreciation for God that never had before. Uh, and it surrounded me, but I was almost in this invisible box where I was cut off from being part of it, from contacting it. And I felt like a spectacle. But beyond that, I could feel this one entity off behind me. And as soon as, like I said, as soon as I realized I've got to learn to love myself, he showed up and he said, "You're not going to be here forever." And that was the instant sigh of relief.
Did you see him, or you just felt someone was behind you?
I just felt it. I did not see him. And in the book I describe, he didn't feel like a deity. It didn't feel like Jesus or Muhammad or, any deity. It didn't feel necessarily elevated. It didn't feel human, but it felt male. That's the only thing that I could identify was a male energy, but it seemed to offer a sterile kindness, is how I describe it. It was almost like she's suffering so much. Let me go in and just calm her down.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, it wasn't like, oh dear, no, you're fine and embracing me in love. It was more just calm down, lady. And,
Okay.
and so he did. He said, you're not going to be here forever. And as soon as he did, we started sailing off to the left. And off in the distance, I could see this purple glow. And as we got closer and closer to it, I could see these pink and yellow intersecting lines. And it looked like the cosmic web is what I've seen pictures of now. It's exactly what I saw. At the time, I thought it looked like a nebula or a map of brain neurons where they're all lit up. And where they conjoined, that's where it glowed really bright yellow. And as we got closer, I felt this love just coming off, just peace and love, just that I've never felt before. And just being in the distance of it, it encompassed me. And he allowed me to sit there and just kind of take it in. And he knew that I wanted to go to it. And so he said, no, it's not for you right now. And so at that, we started sailing further off to the left. And next thing I know, bam, I was slammed back into my body and my eyes opened. And it was like a computer rebooting, just a whoop, as everything kind of came back online. You remember like the old modems where
Sure, of course. Yeah, yeah.
it takes some time to load up. That's kind of how it was. And my ears were ringing and I could hear the TV in the background. And I thought, okay, I'm back.
Was your
And I tried to sit.
was your family home when you came back into your body?
They were not. I tried to sit up, and as I did, I kept falling over, and I realized I had had a stroke. And so my right arm was hanging limp, my face was drooping, and I couldn't speak. And I felt around and was able to find my phone and called my father-in-law, who, thank God, was just right across the street in the field. Right in front of our house. So, I mean, within 30, 45 seconds of me calling him and slurring 911, he was in my living room. And about 5, 10 minutes later, John and the kids arrived. So I don't know exactly how long I was over there, but it was long enough, you know.
That's a remarkable story. It's really something. So you felt, it sounds like when you realized that you loved yourself, you were a good person and you accepted yourself for who you were. That's when your entity, guide, whatever, angel, whatever, whoever he was, said, okay, I'm here. Everything's cool. Just relax. You're fine. But
Yeah,
it took you to accepting and loving yourself. That was the key, right?
that was it. And I want to clarify, some people have said, that sounds very ego driven. It was nothing to do with ego. It was everything to do with empowering myself to be who I was always supposed to be. Uh, I always understood humility and being humble as kind of, you know, oh, you're so much better than me, and keeping my head down, and it was understanding that we're all on our own journey, that we're all doing the best we can in this life, and to show myself some love and some compassion to be able to empower me to do what I'm supposed to be doing instead of thinking, oh no, I'm never going to be good enough to do that. That's for special people, you know.
Right.
Uh, and that's really kind of the mindset I had before, was thinking that everybody was so much better than me and I would, you know, bow down to people almost and give them everything I have shirt off my back kind of person, and I'm still like that. But I also understand boundaries and, important things to further my journey as well. So it was nothing to do with ego, it was everything with empowering myself and getting out of that wrong mindset.
Absolutely. All right. So your book, and this is just a piece of paper. My producer Kurt will put in the real book.
I would have sent you a book, Dan.
Oh, yeah. I was meaning to ask you. All right. So your book is called "Dying to Meet Them: One Woman's Incredible Journey from NDE to UAP." So now I think would be a good time to move into the UAP side of your life. So you're the owner and the CEO of the Hayden Hughes International UFO Bureau. Tell us, who was Hayden Hughes and how did you get involved with that organization?
Well, Hayden Hughes, funny enough, was from Oklahoma City. He started the International UFO Bureau back in 1957 when he was a teenager. And I am always amazed by some of these older guys who I talked to Brent Raines last week, and he also was involved as a teenager. James Maney was one of the Bureau investigators and was a good friend of Hayden's here in Oklahoma City. And they started off as teenagers. What was funny about Hayden is he would write to people. He didn't care who you were. He was just sending out letters to anybody. And even if he got a negative response like, hey, buzz off, I don't have time for you, he would publish this. And so he kept records of all of these things, astronauts, presidents. Jimmy Carter filed his UFO report with Hayden because Hayden had written to him and said, hey, would you file a report with my bureau? And he was blown away when Jimmy Carter sent back a report handwritten to him. So, and like I said, here on my wall is the letter from Werner von Braun that he wrote to him, and he wrote back to Hayden.
What is Werner von Braun? What did he say? Did he say UFOs and aliens are real? What did he say?
Let's see. Let me pull this off here. It says, this an acknowledgement receipt of your letter of 10 August in which you asked for my personal thoughts regarding the question of unidentified flying objects. From the meager information I have concerning stories of so-called flying saucers, I would conclude that the stories concerning them are apocryphal. Any statements regarding the existence of inexplicable aerial phenomena are, in my opinion, purely in the realm of fantasy and should be thoroughly discounted, inasmuch as there is no evidence to support such contentions. Other than venturing that opinion, I can only add that I have never seen any such phenomena and cannot believe in their existence until I do. I thank you for your letter and interest. Sincerely, Werner von Braun.
What year? What year was that? What year is that?
Let me see here.
Is it dated?
I'm sure it is.
Early 60s, maybe?
I'm not seeing the date on it. Director Development Operations Division. It was from the Army Ballistic Missile Agency.
Well,
yeah.
You know the story when he was on his deathbed, he told his assistant that we had help from them, and he pointed to the sky. So that letter was pure BS. I mean, he knew all about it. He knew all about it.
Yeah.
And I guess in that era, he was still under the we can't tell anybody anything.
Right. Well, funny enough, there's a letter from Edgar Mitchell back before he had his encounter. And at the time he said, no, I don't believe in UFOs or anything like that. And then, of course, we know he went on to have his transformative encounter on his way back from the moon. So it's really interesting, some of the things that are in the archives. I have several letters from different U.S. agencies. J. Edgar Hoover is in there quite a bit. And we've digitized all of these. And you had asked how I came across all of this. Well, there was an investigation whenever I was back with MUFON. I had worked on MUFON University, which I created and recorded the entire training session for UFO investigators. So, thousands of people worldwide are using my investigation techniques that I developed.
You created MUFON University?
I created it.
What year was that?
2021, 2022.
Oh, that recently.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
here within the last couple of years. I worked very close with a dear friend of mine, Terry Lynn Kill, who was on the board of directors there. And she and I had been working for the last several years trying to update the organization and really move it forward. And unfortunately, we both ended up leaving at the end of last year and said, we can do this. We can actually, instead of trying to revise the organization from within, um, we figured, why don't we give an alternative where we can actually imagine the future and embrace some of this new technology that's available to us. So that's where we ended up resurrecting the International UFO Bureau and have a dynamite board of directors, the leadership team. We had a meeting this last week, and the energy going into this is so profound. We have the Navajo Rangers with John Dover, Stan Milford, Michelle Miners. We have UAPPD with Marianne Rich, Marianne and Dave Rich, and Mark D'Antonio. We have some amazing people on our leadership team already, and we've only been working to resurrect this for the last 2 months. So
Wow.
everything is moving very quickly. Our database is already being built. It's expected to be done within the next few months. And we've already integrated AI, which if you go on our website, it's Lexi, who I've trained into my way of thinking and some of the deeper questions that we're wanting to look at. And so she knows the goals of the Bureau and what kind of information we're wanting to pull from all of these UFO reports coming together. So one of the things we're doing is we're adding in indigenous stories that Michelle Miners has gathered. It's over 500 from the Uinta Basin. And we're going to be adding that to the information from the archives from Hayden's investigations, and then also from oncoming reports. So we'll be able to look at the phenomena as a whole for as much as we have recorded history, to be able to feed things in and to understand how the phenomena has changed over time. Is it presenting any differently? How is it presenting the same? Is the phenomena presenting specifically in specific spots around the globe? Do we only see the orbs around the coast, or are they seen inland? What kind of abductions are happening in conjunction with different types of craft? So can we draw any informed conclusions about who is piloting what, or where are they coming from? Are they coming from the ocean? Are they coming from inner earth? Are they interdimensional? So there's all of these things that we now have the technology to be able to rapidly assess all of this information and bring it together and then put out different reports based on our findings. So that's kind of the direction that we're going with the Bureau now that it's up and going again. Initially, whenever I came across the Bureau, I was investigating a case. I had brought up MUFON. I was investigating a schoolyard encounter, and that was the one that was highlighted on Ancient Aliens. And after I finished up that case, it was a schoolyard encounter that happened in southeastern Oklahoma in 1975. And there was about 20 kids, 18, 20 kids there that saw this craft floating directly over them. And they ended up, one of the boys went up on top of the schoolhouse, brought out a shotgun, southeastern Oklahoma.
Right. Right.
Brought out a shotgun and trained it onto the UFO, which was hovering about 80 feet from him. And when he did that, it took off and went over to the area of an old sawmill that they had on the property. They had like 6,000 acres out there that they owned. And they ended up going in for the night. And the oldest boy was boarding up the windows and the doors, and kids were hiding under the bed. They were all scared. The teacher was trying to get them to calm down. The kids were saying there was entities outside that seemed to be shape-shifting. And they said sometime during the night, everything went silent. And when it did, they knew it was over. But that next day they got up and they packed sack lunches, and the teacher took them for a field trip up to the sawmill to go look for the UFO. And unfortunately, they didn't find anything. So, and all the kids that I spoke to that are now adults, they all remember packing their sack lunches, get their sandwiches and stuff, and then heading up there to go look for the UFO.
Wow,
Um,
that's a great
so they came
story.
back, and whenever they did, the teacher looked in the outdoor meat locker and was going to set something out for dinner. But all the processed beef, she said there was about 2 sides of beef in there. All of it was gone. And so she informed the owner of
So
the
they're not
school.
vegan. Clearly, those extraterrestrials were not vegans, right?
Well, yeah, well, and how bizarre, because they had a working ranch there at the site. It was the Buchanan family that owned this little school, and they had like 11 kids themselves. So 11 of like the 18 kids were
Yes.
Buchanans. But Mr. Buchanan had come back from a business trip, and the teacher had told him, "Look, all the meat's missing." Well, the next day they go out there and it's filled back up. And he said, "Oh no, we're not touching this crap." And so he hauled it out into the middle of the field and burned it all. And the kids said they remember eating oatmeal for like several days after that because they didn't have any of the meat.
The meat was gone.
But excuse me.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
So Hayden started his group in 1957.
Yes.
I don't know what's with my voice today. I'm sorry. When did he stop the group or pass away? When did that happen?
Right. So in investigating this schoolyard encounter, I kept coming across Hayden Hughes and the International UFO Bureau. And I thought, well, I've lived in Oklahoma City my whole life, loved everything about UFOs. I've never heard of this. What is this about? So I went to go reach out to him. And unfortunately, in 2017, he had passed away. I ended up getting a hold of his widow, and come to find out she lives about a mile away from me.
Okay.
And so we met up, and I said, would you mind if I went through some of Hayden's files to see if there's anything that corroborates with the schoolyard encounter? Because it looks like he was actually out there during this time. And even just prior to it in the 60s, he had been investigating and had several investigators out there looking at this area. Even John Keel had been out to this area, and it's a small town called Hartshorn, Oklahoma. This town has 2,000 people. The population's remained unchanged from the 60s until now, still 2,000. And they have thousands of UFO reports from this small little town. And I was blown away. So I asked her, can I go through his files and see what all is in there? And she said, honey, he would want you to have it. Just have all the files.
Was it all in his garage or something? Storage?
It was in a storage unit. And so I got one of my friends here to come get a SUV and load it up. And there were about 15 banker boxes full of files that I ended up bringing back to my home. And then I worked with Chris Jordan of Curious Realm and Curious Research to come out. He spent like 3 days over here at my home.
I know Chris, yeah.
Yes, the man did not sleep. I don't even know why we got him a hotel, because he was here. I would go lay down and take a nap. He'd still be in this little office just scanning things away. But he did. He brought all of his setup and got everything digitized.
Did you need to purchase or acquire the name from the widow? I mean, did you buy the name International UFO Bureau?
I did not buy it. She gave it to me. One of her and Hayden's dear friends, Bonnie, now lives with, Hayden's widow lives with, and she's actually a notary and she does some legal work and stuff. And so while we were there, she went ahead and drew up a contract that just says, hey, I'm willingly giving you the Bureau and everything to do with Hayden and his investigations. I'm transferring it to you.
Are you a nonprofit?
We are a nonprofit. We resurrected it in November of this last year. It was right before Thanksgiving. And so, well, I guess we're going on 3 months now that we've been working at this. And so It's
Wow.
everything has happened so quickly, and we've had so many people come alongside and offer any assistance, or they all want to be part of it because we're doing something new. We're trying to find answers utilizing new technology, and we're trying to set things up in a whole new way, uh, where hopefully the UFO community can get behind it and continue the search for answers.
So I know you're digitizing the records. Will
Uh-huh.
will your information be online so historians like a Richard Dolan or a Michael Schratt, who are people who are friends of mine, that they could review your files or the Bureau's files and say, wow, I never heard of that case. Is that going to happen?
Right. Well, we do have them digitized now. Right now, we're working on making them searchable. So a lot of them are PDFs. And so we're going through and pulling the data from the PDFs to make it all searchable to put into the database. I have some of the things up on the website, just a few handful of things right now, but there is so much. I still haven't even looked through and read through every single one. In fact, let me see here.
How many different cases would you say that there are?
Well, the bulk of it is not actual cases. So in the 1980s, there was a house fire there at Hayden's home where he had all the stuff stored. And so some of the files got destroyed during that time. I think that it was a lot of the individual case files that actually happened. So I have a lot of the write ups, the ending reports from them, but not the intake. There are things from Ground Saucer Watch, which I believe Hynek ran back in the day, and Hayden worked in conjunction with Hynek. And so there's reports from Ground Saucer Watch and some originals and stuff like that. But um, it's not individual case reports. A lot of it is his assessment of things. But once we get all of that out there, we do plan on putting a lot of it up on the website, and there may be paid tiers to get access to different levels of it. But again,
Okay.
we have to have that to operate.
Are you
you know,
going to? Yeah, I understand, because I run the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, which is
absolutely
a nonprofit. We ask for
right.
$150 donation once a year per member. Do you
Yeah.
know Paul Hynek?
I've met Paul. I've met him at a few different conferences. I believe he was out at Alien Con when I was out there, and we got to speak some.
Okay.
But I don't know him like on a personal level, really.
Okay.
We've just kind of spoken in passing.
Okay. All right. So when your files are searchable, you have to let me know,
Okay.
because you and I are going to do a press release. And
Okay.
I'm launching something called the WOW signal, I think this week or next week, but it could be Wednesday. And the WOW signal is going to be news from ufologists from around the world who can input their own press releases into this new system that I've created, and it'll get blasted all over the world. We have 750,000 name email list combined with
Wow.
with our media
Again, wow.
with our media partners. Yeah. Well, the WOW signal, right? You know what the WOW signal was.
Yeah, that it's ingenious that you used
Isn't
that.
that, I
That's
know,
that's
isn't
a
it?
wonderful name.
I had it last year for we had a newsletter for HDA called the WOW signal, and my daughter Anjali did a beautiful logo for it. And after I did 2 issues, I'm like, this is too good to be a newsletter. I have to make this more prominent. So I'll let you know. It's going to be the wowsignal.news. I think we're launching Wednesday this week. And
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm hoping it really
We
just
need
catches on.
something like that.
But yeah, well, now I spoke to Steve Bassett, who's one of my best friends, and he's my partner in HDA, and he's been around for 30 years. He never heard of the International UFO Bureau. So Mindy,
Nobody has.
you have your work cut out for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's so funny. One of the things this is what I was turning around to get you.
Oh,
This is
wow,
Project Grudge.
wow.
It's the loose leaf, and then if you can see in here, let me get
That's
some on the pages.
between Sign and Blue Book is Grudge.
Yep, and these right here are addendums that have been taped in
Wow.
and have never been released. Project Grudge, some of the pages have been released, I believe, like New Fork, but they did not have these addendums in them. the thing with Hayden was he actually, there's a video on the website. It's about 15 minutes, and it's an interview with Hayden, uh, probably 20, 30 years ago. And he's describing some of the things that he did uh, throughout his investigative history. He was actually invited out to Wright Pat whenever he was a young man, and they actually showed him UFO photos. And I think that he maintained that connection. One of his good friends, James Maney, actually went into the Air Force, and I think that James might have been responsible for this,
Wow.
for the grudge file. I don't know. And that's some of the things that we need to investigate going forward. But excuse me, I'm getting over a cold here. Um, but he flew under the radar so much, with so much that he did. He held conferences here that had thousands of attendees, and he had a national radio show and had millions of listeners.
Incredible. He's like he's an
And
unknown hero of ufology, this guy.
he absolutely is. I don't understand how he did not become one of the big names in ufology
Right.
with all of the things. Heaven's Gate, him and Brad Steiger, if you're familiar with Brad Steiger,
No.
that was his partner. And they worked together. Heaven's Gate would come in to the Bureau and talk to them. And they just kind of let them talk. They actually gave them lie detectors. And on the website, there's the results of, little parts of the lie detector that they took there in the office, and they actually passed it. So we know that they believed what they were saying.
Yeah.
There's also the Betty Andreasen. I have lie detector tape from her showing that she also believed what she was saying 100%.
Are there photos in the files?
There are some photos. Some of them have been lost to time. One of the main ones is the Tulsa Boy Scout photo, which was turned in during the 1965 flap that we discussed earlier. And there was a little boy that was a Boy Scout out in Tulsa, and he had grabbed his camera and taken a picture of a saucer during that big explosion of sightings. And it was actually taken by Blue Book. I think that Hayden had sent the negative to Blue Book and never got it back. Same thing with the Jimmy Carter report. I have copies of it, but the original still has never been found. And there was talk that it was maybe sent to someone in Hollywood and never returned. Unfortunately, tried reaching out and never got any response.
Okay. So that's a good segue. We have 3 minutes left. I wanted to ask you, how do you think Hollywood historically has handled the UFO phenomenon, and what do you think a group like my Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, how can my group, and you're a member, how can we help move disclosure forward through Hollywood, would you say?
Well, I think what you're doing is so important. We have to change the face of how UFOs are presented to the general population who are not experiencers. We have to listen to the experiencers first. They're the ones who have had the direct contact, the direct experience with it, and portray that correctly. We can't put out fear-based stuff, but we can also put out the Space Brothers. There is somewhere in the middle where we have to honor what the experiencers themselves are telling us. I know back in the 90s, there was a lot of fear around it. And there was always what they call the giggle factor. We have to take that out. We have to take out that caricature, little green alien, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and look at it as a true phenomenon, because we know it is true. That's me and my colleagues discuss this a lot. We are disclosure. The government knows what the government knows, but we know what we know, and we can put it out there in a level-headed manner that people understand. And I think that the conversation is opening so much more as knowledge continues to grow and expand. I know my kids, being Gen Z, they have no question that there's other entities out there. So I think that just the population, as we're continuing to go along, is more ready for it. And if we can put it out there with organizations such as yours to make it digestible and easily understandable and put it out there as truth, people in their spirit realize they know truth when they feel it and they come across it. So quit over dramatizing
Right.
everything. Let's put out the true stories because they're incredible in themselves.
Yeah, what I say is not all the aliens are here to kill us or eat us. I have friends who are literally in contact with Pleiadians who are benevolent and beautiful and wonderful. All right, we have a few seconds left. Mindy, thank you so much. Give us the website for your bureau. What's the URL for your bureau?
It's www.internationalufobureau.com. And if people are interested, they can go to the end and at the very bottom of the page and subscribe. And we're going to be starting to put out newsletters and stuff. We're getting all of our emails configured and everything in the background. So, like I said, there's so many things going on at the same time. But if they'd like to stay up to date, go subscribe and we'd love to have them.
That's great. And how can people contact you?
Well, just through the website is the best way, or through my website, mindytautfest.com. Either one will lead them to me.
Great. Thank you. I wish we had more time, but I have to wrap it up. Thank you so very much. That was wonderful. And this will air Thursday night and then in perpetuity forever. But I'm serious.
Yeah.
When you're searchable, let's do a press release together because I'll help you put you on the map because between you and I, we probably know 95% of ufologists around the globe, and they need to know about your archive. That was a real find, and you did a really good deed with that. So
thank you, Dan. I appreciate it.
I admire what you did. All right, I gotta go. See you next time on From Hollywood. It's Paranormal Tonight, and just hold on one second. I'll make sure everything uploads. Thank you. I'll see you next week. Thank you very much.